try. Okay. Well, hopefully that's going to work. Okay, it says it's recording. So John, if you'd like to start the meeting, go ahead.
Okay, great. So it's officially 5:02, and I'd like to start the May Airport Commission agenda. Call it to order. First line on the agenda is the proof of posting a notice. So Mark, did we properly do that?
We did. It's posted in the usual location up front, and it was on our website. And I'm sure that Rich took care of it at the airport.
Okay.
We did,
okay.
yes.
The next item is public comment. And so we'd like the public to be able to talk for 3 minutes, up to 3 minutes per person on a topic hopefully related to, go ahead.
Okay, and what we can do is I can call on people if they want by the end of their phone numbers, just to go through a sequence that way, if that works for you, Mr. Chair, in case anybody wishes to speak. So we have a phone number ending with 1263. Does that person wish to speak? Phone number ending with, well, why don't we just ask people to speak? I think it'd be easier that way. The phone numbers. So who wished to speak to the committee? We'll just, I don't think there's too many people here. It won't be a problem. So Steve, do you want to go speak?
How do you say you want to speak?
Speak. No, you're there, Steve. If you want to speak, go ahead. Oh, if he doesn't, that's fine. Is there anybody who wishes to speak?
Who are you talking to, Mark?
Anybody who can hear my voice. Does anybody from the public wish to speak?
Can you hear me? I'm a public.
Yes,
Steve,
we can hear
you.
Thank you, Steve Ziegler. And thank you very much, you guys. This is just tremendously exciting. I have some questions in regards to.
Bring me the.
All right, sorry about that.
Charger.
And those of you who are not speaking, could you maybe mute yourself? That would be helpful.
Sorry, Mark. I thought everybody was muted.
No.
Okay, I'll mute myself.
Go ahead, Steve. No, don't mute yourself, please. Go ahead.
What'd you say?
Go ahead, Steve.
Oh, go ahead. Oh my God. Okay, okay. I'm very sorry about that. Yeah. The thing I'd like to talk about is the obstruction, airspace obstruction. We have a general item here in regards to airspace obstruction regard to the FAA. Is there? I need a specific document that relates to what that is. I need a document that explains how those numbers, feet above sea level, I believe, or what other criteria there are, need to be explained so that we can understand fully what Airport Commission wants to do with the existing trees, obstacles, etc. And the big question is, why is this such an issue at this point? The next specific question for the commission is, who is paying for this report? Who is paying for this monitoring? And how is that being done? Is that city money? Is that FAA money? Or is that coming out of the Maury Airport money? I would like to know that. And also, what proof is there that we have obstructions in these areas? And are those obstructions actually significant enough to disrupt air traffic and to disrupt the safety of the airport in general? Again, why is this being addressed now prior to the airport master plan process?
Okay.
I have had clients in the past that have been upset about intrusions on their property, and I'm very concerned about this happening again. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Go ahead, Mark.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak? It's easier just to ask this way as opposed to going through the list.
Yes, I'd like to speak.
If you could identify yourself, please, with your name and community.
Yeah, this is David Bryce from Summit Ridge Road in Middleton, town of Middleton. Can you hear me okay?
We can hear you. Thank you.
Okay. I just want to bring up the methods of reporting airport noise in aircraft. It seems that the method of reporting on the website's difficult to get all the information. If you want to provide an N number of the plane, it's sometimes available and sometimes not. And sometimes there are so many planes that are flying low on particular days that it's difficult to track of all of them. So what I would suggest doing is making a list of these aircrafts and then turning them in on an Excel program in a different manner instead of trying to put it on the Middleton website. Maybe they could be put in an email to Rich Morey, so he'll have the N numbers or he have the recurrences on an Excel program and can look at them in one lump complaint, because it appears that just the method of reporting makes it difficult to report the sheer number of planes that are not complying with the noise abatement protocol. Thank you very much.
Okay.
John, if I can just ask Mr. Bryce a question, did you mean that you want to report multiple planes as in the form is limiting to just one? Is that what you mean?
Yes, there's
Okay.
usually on a given day there may be more than one.
Got it. Thank you.
Thank you.
John, I'll just ask if anybody else wishes to speak. I don't mean to step on your toes.
No, I'm fine. You can
Okay.
continue on. This is awkward for all of us. We'll do the best we
Yeah.
can.
Is there anybody else from the public who wishes to speak under public comment regarding agenda items?
Sure, this is Jenny Pavlovic. I
Okay,
just
go
want to
ahead.
agree with the previous, I just want to agree with the previous comment that I've had the same issue of some days I might have like 10 planes that are flying low over my house, and I would rather have a different way of reporting because it's really time consuming and difficult to try to do that through the website.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Is there anybody else who wishes to speak under public comment? Okay, John, I'll turn it back to you. I think I don't see any hands raised. I had seen the
Okay.
hand raised earlier, but it's not raised anymore. So there, just so that people understand, there is, those of you who are not participating by computer, there is an ability to raise your hand. Depends on which type of interface you have, but there's a hand raised feature just for future reference. But participating by phone, unfortunately, that's not possible. So I don't see anybody else at the moment, John, so I'll turn it back to you.
Okay, so that completes the public comment part of the agenda. The next item would be the approval of the minutes. Has everybody had a chance to look at them? Is there any comments?
I looked at them. I thought they were fine. So that's my comment.
Okay,
And commission members, if you could introduce just say your last name when you speak, that would be helpful, just so that we get familiar with your names. Some people are
Thank
not
you.
participating by computer.
I will identify myself after the fact. This is Robert Burke, who said that I reviewed the meeting minutes and I thought they were acceptable.
Would you like to make a motion? Robert?
Certainly, I would make a motion to approve the meeting minutes as written.
Okay. I second them. So we have a first and a second. Any discussion? Okay, hearing no discussion, I'd like to call a vote
me
on
just-
the acceptance of the meeting.
Okay.
Go ahead, Mark.
Yep. No, I just wanted to see if anyone had raised their hands. I didn't see anybody. Go ahead.
Okay, so with a first and second, no discussion. So I'll call a vote for the acceptance of the meeting, or the minutes, excuse me. All in favor, I guess, do we say aye or do we do it sequentially?
Why don't we, since we didn't do a roll call, let me go through and read the roll if that's okay, John, because we had a quorum at one point, but the way Madison does it, which is very helpful, we haven't been set up that way, but Madison actually asks commission members to be visible, but obviously not everyone has that technology or the means to do that. So we just need to periodically make sure we have quorum. So I'm going to call the roll here on the approval of the minutes.
Okay.
Burke.
Present, and I vote aye.
Okay. Fuzard, are you present? And I? I do not hear Luke Fuzard. Halleck, you're present.
Yes, I'm present, say aye.
Okay. Monson,
I am present and I say aye.
okay. And Richardson,
Present, aye.
thank you. Bond, Michelle Bond, are you present? Let me see if anyone's muted. There are a lot of people muted, so Michelle, if you're muted, I'm not hearing you. I'll assume you're not present. And Ray Fay, are you present? No Ray. So we have 4 members present. Halleck, Munson, Rich, Burke. And the motion passed, Mr. Chair.
Okay, thank you very much.
Okay.
Moving on to the next item, the chair report. Most of the items that I had, I just put down as discussion action items. However, I sent this meeting notes at the last month because we didn't have a meeting, and I wanted to make sure everybody was totally up to date on all activities so that we know. At the meeting that we had 2 months ago, we talked about knock boxes, and at the time, the question was whether they were something that were inherited into the land lease as the laws change, or were they, how would we go forward with knock boxes? And just to remind everybody, the knock box is a small box that contains the keys, and that only can be accessed by the fire department, the police department, and EMS. It cannot be accessed by anybody on the airport. The motion was that the last time that we would have Brad Sabera come to the meeting, and we would also get a legal opinion from the city's council. I asked Mark to delay the request of the city's council until such time as I talk to the folks at the fire district. The thinking was that the cost to solve the problem could be half as much as what it costs to get a legal opinion, and you still have to solve the problem. And that turned out to be pretty much correct. So the thought process that we have, and we'll put this on the next agenda and we'll have it for a vote, is that the airport would, out of our funds, locate lock boxes that would hold groups of keys, and they would be available again to anybody for the fire department, EMS, or police as needed. Of course, having keys on file is no guarantee. They wouldn't use forced entry. But the cost, if you roll up a little bit, Mark, the cost of the boxes, can you go up in the document a little bit? There you go. Keep going up.
When you say up, I think you mean down.
Yeah, I'm sorry, I want to see what the costs are. It's down below. We talked about the log. There it is. We're almost there. There you go. So the cost of all 3 knock boxes is about $1,700. So at the next meeting, we will have Brad come and explain everything in detail. And we will look at the cost and have a vote to determine whether or not this is something the airport commission feels like we ought to proceed on. In addition to that, we have, and I'll talk about this more down when we talk about operating funds, we have submitted petitions, the city has, to the BOA. We voted on a list of entitlements, and that list went to the Planning Commission, which was approved, and then went to the Common Council, which was approved, and then was published in the local paper, and then forwarded on to the Bureau of Aeronautics. So that whole process of redoing our entitlements list, which you have to do every so many years, to the best of my knowledge, is complete. Mark, would you agree with that? You were handling that.
I would. The sequence was slightly different, just for clarification. The publication in the newspaper was before the public hearing.
Okay.
There's no requirement to publish the city's action after the hearing. So I didn't want people to. I think that's what you meant, but to clarify, we had a hearing that was with a notice in the paper. The hearing was held by the Planning Commission. Planning Commission recommended approval. The council approved it, and then I forwarded the paperwork, including proof of publication, to the Bureau of Aeronautics. So like you said, we should be all done with that.
So that process is completed, and the BOA has what they need.
Right.
Okay, perfect. That's all I had in the activities that other than what we have down below. So with that, I'd like to move on to the airport manager report, and I'll turn it over to Rich.
Very good, John.
Okay.
So just to, we're going to start off the way I have it set up here. As a beginning, I want to let people know what the COVID-19 situation has done out here, at least to the Maury Airplane Company. Fuel sales are down 27% from last year, and flight operations are down 55% from last year, from almost 290 hours last April to 130 hours currently. It's just because things are tight. Obviously, people are not, some people are coming out and staying current. The flight instruction has been severely limited. Now, over the last month, we've had a change here. We've actually had 12 noise or low-flying aircraft complaints. Can everyone hear me, first off?
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. All right. The majority of these have been direct email responses to me, with a couple, 3 direct phone calls to the airport, and then a couple on the noise abatement hotline, and none via the computerized system that we set up to, in theory, make things easier to make reports. So, something to let you know about. We could go over in detail these, but essentially what we've happened, when we have been able to identify the pilots, we've spoken with them. When people have requested a callback, we have attempted to contact them, either leaving a message in one case, or actually speaking with individuals and/or responding via an email. The problem I would see with emailing a large number of, I'd much rather have each incident reported than trying to sort out incidents en masse. That would make life a little harder to try to quantify these things. But that's simply my opinion on the subject. Let's see, going down, no accidents or incidents on the field. Ground school has gone online out here, which is going well, as has our pilot safety seminars, which we're somewhat limited on, but we're continuing to do so. As of last time, Sperry New Holland tractor has been repaired and returned to service. City has the bill, which I believe was a bit over $20,000, and will be voting on it if they haven't already for payment. Another change since this, I sent out this information. The runway end identifier lights for runway 28 are in service now. The tech showed up 2 days ago, and we do have a spare board in case we need to do that. We're also looking at sending the circuit boards back that were damaged to see if they can be overhauled as opposed to trying to buy new ones. Solar panel project continues to make progress. All of the directional boring and routing cable is complete, so the work on the east end of the runway is done. Construction crew, yes, still working well. Now, kind of exciting, the first panels have been mounted on their, I think there's 2 sections of them up as of today. And then Larry Wagner, our farmer, said that they did a reasonable job of smoothing out the ruts after their boring and digging out there, but he had to go out and get them, rework them to make sure, to smooth them out to a pre-standard, what they were like beforehand. And he's not sure who's going to pay for that, but that's something he brought up to me. One last thing, or a couple things. I have been in touch with Josh Holbrook about the CARES Act funding. We have potential of we have $69,000 in grants, which is part of the COVID-19 response from the federal government. There will be, I think we'll have to do some formalized letter of acceptance, and then there'll be a requirement to submit bills on a monthly basis to access this money, but the details are yet to be worked out. And then I'm in the process of trying to solicit a bid on removing one tree on Blettner's property that Mark Opitz was able to secure permission to have that tree removed. I don't want to jump ahead, but also I just wanted to mention that these trees were identified in an email from the FAA on February 14th of this year, listing them as high, medium, or low impact. Hopefully not impact, let's put it that way, but on the instrument approach procedures and landing procedures here. So we've been progressing somewhat, methodically at trying to identify where they are and to contact the landowners and work out some kind of remediation. All right. I believe that pretty much covers everything that I had. Who are, as you probably know, the yes, sir.
Just a
Go
quick
ahead, Kevin.
question. So you were saying, this is Kevin. Can everyone hear me?
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah. Okay. So Rich, you were saying that your operations are down 55%. Is that because of the stay-home constraints, or just the general economic impact of aviation, or a little bit of both, or?
Yes, I hate to say yes to all of that, but yeah. But we made a decision early on to cease flight training activities at the initial lockdown. Now, getting further guidance from the FAA and from trade organizations, flight training is considered a exempt and or a critical bit of business, job. So we're going to
Essential.
slowly start ramping up. Frankly, we've got some instructors who have chosen for their personal reasons to stop flying, and others are interested in going ahead with this, and there are students that don't want to be exposed, don't want to come out and do that, and others that do. It's an individual choice that they can make on their own with their own, obviously, situation. So we'll start flight training again, but a bulk of our operations are flight training. Also, as a secondary, our charter operations were completely suspended. We'll hopefully, we're working on an extension through the FAA as a check ride issue, and we should be able to perhaps operate again regularly through the end of the month at least.
Okay, thank you. It's a very good explanation.
Thanks, Kevin.
Are you done, Rich?
Yeah, I think I've got everything covered that I needed to.
Okay, I'm just going to add a couple pieces to that. I had a call from one of the neighbors asking about Rock the Ramp, and I called or communicated. I say called. I sent an email and got one back from Matt. And since EA is been canceled, they're reassessing what they want to do. There's no decision made. So that is the answer to that question. With respect to, I think Bryce had a comment about email templates. We have a Word template that Rob Burke developed that all of these have to follow the FAA guidelines. So there is a template. Unfortunately, the FAA requires one line item, if you would, per airplane. So you can't cluster them together. So, but I think you could take the template and copy it and then just change the data that is changed, and that would probably help a lot. And then you could email that in. That would be one option. So I would ask you to take a look at the city's website under the noise reporting and take a look at that template if you would. Having said that, is there any questions from anybody on the commission about either my report or the chair report or the airport manager's report before we move on? Okay, hearing none, we'll go to the first discussion item.
John?
Which there was some questions.
John?
Yes. Yes, sir.
John, this is Mark. I just wanted to say that for those of you who have a computer screen, I just displayed the location of the template. It's right here on the right side of the airport page, airport noise complaint form downloadable.
There you go.
And so there it is on the screen for those of you who can see it.
Yep. Okay, there you have it. So we have contemplated a form and we have it available. And like I said, I think you can just copy them over and change the parts that you have. Mark, appreciate it. Okay, with that, we'll go on to the next item, which is the airspace obstacles, which there was a couple of questions asked about. And with that, I'll let Mark dive into this a little bit and just kind of get us up to speed. Mark?
Yep, I'm here. I'm just
Go ahead.
unmuting myself so that people don't hear my typing. As Rich already mentioned, we've identified one tree and received permission from Tim Carey on behalf of Bob Bletner to remove said tree. I think I have it. Oh, I thought I had it on my screen. I guess I don't have it here. Sorry. Anyway, so we have a permission from John Meinholz to the west. He's the off Capitol View Road. There's a tree that is located just on the edge of his property. I'm actually looking for a photo of that at the moment. I have this all ready to go, and for some reason, it's not on my screen now.
Okay.
I'm just looking for it again. Bear with me. This is requiring a bit of adaptation for all of us.
Yeah, no, this is, as they say, the first day at the rodeo.
Well, I had a meeting last week and thought I had figured out the glitches, but for some reason I'm having trouble today. So,
Well, the drawing that you're referring to is part of the airport packet, if I'm not mistaken, and therefore it should be available in printed form.
just a second here.
Yeah.
I'll be right there. I'm at the file here. Here it is. All right, now I got to share my screen again. The joys of technology. Okay. So, does everyone see that? So this is an example of one of the trees that's been identified as being encroaching into the approach surface. This one is by, I think it was 4.5 feet. So it's not much at all, but it still is an encroachment that the FAA, as you mentioned earlier, John, a guy named Mr. Ponce emailed us in February, and they had done some sort of a routine survey of obstructions, probably as a result of the discussion about the antenna at Northside. I think that prompted them just to do a routine survey, and that identified these 8 obstructions. So I went out in the field with one of our engineering techs, and we identified which tree it is and the approximate location. It straddles the property line with John Meinholz and the Arndts to the south. I've reached out to both property owners. Father Meinholz has given his consent. I have not heard back yet from the Arndts, but I'm expecting to hear back from them soon. The reason I want both of them to agree to it is because the canopy clearly extends across the line. This is the list that you were talking about. I'm sorry?
Mark, isn't that tree on the Arndts property?
It's basically straddling it, Steve. It looks to me like it's based on a fence line. It looks to me like it's mainly on the Meinholz property, but it clearly involves both property owners. So I want both of them to be to give consent to it.
Right. And you've not been able to touch base with the Arndts at this point?
I talked to them a few weeks ago. They're out of town right now, and I'm waiting to hear back. I emailed them this document. So this is the location that was mapped by GPS coordinates.
This is important, Mark. This is important because Mr. Ziegler asked earlier about the height above sea levels for the trees. And I think it's
correct.
The height. The FAA documented height above sea level for the obstacles or are in this document. The AGL and the MSL, mean sea level, is the altitude above sea level.
Great. And I will be able to get a copy of that document, I presume?
This
It's in
document,
the airport. Go ahead, John. Sorry.
this should be in your packet. This is posted.
Yeah, but it's not clear enough, John. I need more information. Who do I contact for that information?
Well, if you would like to send Mark a list of what you'd like to know, we'll see if it's something we can get for you.
Very good, John. So I need to deal with Mr. Opitz. Is that correct?
Yeah, I think that would be a entry point because Mark is handling the trees.
But I can elaborate
Thank you
briefly
very
here.
much.
I can elaborate briefly here, Steve. This tree that I highlighted with the arrow on the left, if you go to the longitude, you can see that that's the 89 degrees 32 west longitude. The other ones are all 31, which means they are east of this site. So none of the trees, this is the farthest one to the west, the one that I just showed the picture of. So there's nothing else that's, so I think that answers your question.
It's a start, Mark. I will be in touch for more information.
Okay.
Thank you so much.
Okay. This is what we were given. That spreadsheet or that table, and then this map is what we were given by the FAA. So applying these two resources to trees on the ground is taking a little bit of effort. One reason why it's not on the fast track at the moment is because I learned, I was reminded, because I knew this 20 years ago, but I'd forgotten, that oak trees you don't want to prune them during the growing season. And most of these trees, I'm sure, are oak trees. The one that's to the south of the airport on the Bletner property is not an oak tree. That's the tree that's right behind, basically southwest of the Airport Road Business Park sign. And that one we have received written consent to proceed with removal. It's going to be funded by the cost to remove the trees, or trim is what we are preferring, is going to be a city airport fund expense. So that's all I have on obstructions, John.
Yeah, and so the questions that were asked at the comment section, these obstacles are identified periodically by the FAA, and they are given to us as having an impact on our approaches. As you can see, there's like a little trapezoid. So if it's in the approach path and it penetrates that path, then it becomes a safety factor. And that list is then given to the airport to remediate. So the FAA does it at their cost. They provide the information, and paid for by the city of the airport. And then we do the best we can to work with the neighbors, if it's not on our property, to resolve any problems that exist and to seek some kind of collaboration. So that's kind of the story in a nutshell.
And the way we've handled this in the past, when we had a tree on Father Meinholz's property right across the street from you, Mr. Ziegler, several years ago, we had an arborist come in and professionally trim the tree and create a crown shape to it so that it looked natural. In that case, I didn't think they did as good of a job as I would have liked to have them do. I remember that one pretty well. It looked like it was a little flat on top. So this year, I want to make sure that we, this time around, that for anything that we just trim, that we have it done professionally done. The contractor that Jim Rip used a couple months ago, actually several months ago now, I met with him twice. I really thought he did a great job, as did Mr. Rip. So that is the type of quality of work that we are looking in the future.
Well, there's certainly a lot of discrepancies from the last time that was done, but thank you so much, Mark, for that convoluted description of I appreciate it. Thanks.
Okay. All right. Mark, you come done with the trees and trimming?
I am. I think I had one more drawing now that I was looking at my, that was all I had. Yep, that's all I had. Here's the packet again.
Are we okay?
Yep, we're good.
Okay, with that, does anybody have any questions from the commissions? Mark, related to the tree trimming? Okay, hearing no questions, I'll move on to item 2, the operating fund and the entitlements financial review. So this was given, this is the close of March. They don't close the months until about 10 days afterwards. So this is the most recent thing we have. I'd like to start at the top with hangar land leases. There's a discrepancy of 118,000 to 108,000. I talked to Bill Burns about that, and the right number is the 108,000. We proposed to the city council 118,000. They decided on 108,000. So actually the approved budget is 108,376. So I have asked Bill if he would correct that. And then next time we'll have the numbers in alignment, if you will. If we go down a little further, there is, as Rich alluded to, we're going to have the airport grounds maintenance, where is a $35,000 budgeted item, which we've only had 1,116 so far. That's going to jump, and we're going to have a roughly a $22,000 or $23,000 entry, which was the cost of repairing the old snow removal equipment. So that will start to tend, I think, more towards the budget. The other, so I'm going to leave this up, and then I'm going to go into the CARES program and elaborate a little bit more. So all airports are category. Can you lead that up a little bit? Go back, Mark, the funds report. Yes, because I can refer back to that. Thank you. All airports of our size was allocated a $69,000 grant, if you will, for the CARES program for airport. There's an application that has to be made, Rich is making it, and it has to be used for certain categories of expenses. And the way it works is we pay our bills, we send copies of the receipts to the BOA, and the BOA submits them for reimbursement. The line items that would be applicable would be airport grounds maintenance, airport manager's contract, and also prairie maintenance. So you can see that in itself, the budgeted is over 69,000. So we basically will be, we will be reimbursed that amount of money. So the 69,000. In addition to that, there's a entitlement forgiveness. So the entitlement match of $8,334 will not need to be made to the Bureau of Aeronautics this year. We normally pay $8,334 to get the $150,000 that goes in the entitlement pool. This year, we don't have to do, I guess I'll call it our buy-in. These categories that I talked about go all the way back to the first of the year. So any cash outlay beginning January, the 1st of January is applicable. So all the funds that we paid, we will submit and get a reimbursement for. We originally thought that there would be some discretionary pools of funds that would be held by the Vision by Great Lakes, but unfortunately that didn't materialize. The problem is that primary airports, which are the carrier airports, are bleeding profusely, and literally all the money is going to keep commercial airline open and keep that operating, which makes total sense. So that's why there's been a lot of vacillation, and we've had a lot of discussions. I was reluctant to really put anything down in writing because it changed every week, and I didn't want to be look like I was overly confused when the fact is that the U.S. government is a little bit overly confused. So that is the CARES Act. I might also make comment that the snow removal equipment bid that we passed is in progress, and we should know what that number is sometime in June, I think, at the latest. So we will have that to bid on and accept, and then we could look at the effect. But that number is likely to be 185,000. So the 150,000 of that we will not pay an entitlement match on, but everything above the 150,000 will be entitlement match will have to be paid on it. Okay, so that is kind of where our balances is, our snow removal equipment, and kind of the work we have in progress. So this will all be kind of changed out as we go forward. Are there any questions on what I just said? Was I fairly clear? Or
Very
Okay.
much, John, but is it a 10% match on that additional 35, do you know, or where are we at on that?
On the additional 35, well, I forget what the percentage it is, but it's $8,334 on 150,000. So
Okay.
it would be that percentage. So take 834 over 150,000, and that'll give you the,
So,
that'll give
yeah, definitely not 10%. Okay, very good.
No, that's, I was on the phone with Josh to go over all of this stuff before this meeting, just to make sure that to the best of our knowledge from what we know today, that's the accurate, what I just said is how it works.
Okay. So it won't be an awful lot of money to cover the discrepancy. Very good.
All right. Now, there's not as much as we had hoped for, but I understand the primary airports have got major problems, and we have to keep them around. All right. So moving up to the next slide, Mark. The entitlements, there you go. So this is a lot of the work that we had put in and we had put forward in the approval process that we went to the BOA, the one that went to the Planning Commission, everything else. I just want to make a comment on some of these things because these numbers move around and some of these things are just not going to happen. So the SRE equipment at the time we thought was 170,000. That's more likely to be 185,000, but the number will not be known until such time as the bids come in. The RCO is, we've already talked about that a number of times. The FAA is not going to approve it. The FAA is not going to fund it. And the number is probably more like $450,000. Land use zoning was something we talked about, but we took that out of the program. So that's not going to be there. The runway lights, we have they're past their lifespan. The new number I got from the BOA is now 500,000. So to replace the lights with engineering is 500,000. And so the other things down below are just things that will go down. The terminal purchase, they do not fund terminals through entitlements. There's a special program for terminals. It's a 90-10 program where with very limited money, and the government will pay 10% and we have to pay 90%. So you can see these numbers are just escalating crazy. And the Bureau of Aeronautics is now talking about maybe even limiting capital projects to one every 4 years. So some of these things drop out. Some of these things will cost a little more. And so we need to try to prioritize it one more time, which we'll do at the next meeting, and we'll try to start putting together some budgets. But I just want to give you kind of just because it's on the paper, first of all, doesn't mean it's something we could do. And second of all, just because the number says something there, that number changes by the BOA on a fairly regular basis. Any questions or comments about that? Okay, with that, I'll move along to the next item, item 3.
John, if we could take
Yes.
a moment just to see if we still have quorum. I'm wondering if Michelle Bond, Ray Fay, or Luke Foussard ever joined the meeting. If you did, could you unmute yourselves, please, and indicate your presence? So I don't see any video indicating you're here. Okay, so, and Cynthia, are you still here?
I am.
Okay, thank you. And Kevin is here. I saw him a moment ago.
Yes, I am.
There he is, and Robert's here. Okay, we still have quorum. Thank you.
All right. All right. Let's continue on to the terminal building. So that's the next discussion that we're going to have. You can just go back to the agenda. I think it is. So I want to, this is something that we'll actually vote on Well, I think we could probably make a motion on this tonight, but I wanted to give you the background about the terminal building. So back when we originally built the airport, there were so many things that really, the city really wasn't aware of, I don't think, at the time. They never built an airport before. They never funded an airport. They really didn't know how to allocate for it. When we got to the part where we were putting in the terminal building, it was 90-10 money, and there really was no taxpayer money available for it. And so there was kind of a quandary on how to go forward with it. And so the Middleton Area Development Corporation got involved, and I was on the Middleton Area Development Corporation as kind of a bridge between the two projects, and funded the building. The unfortunate part of it was the way that it got booked. The way I had asked to get it booked was that the airport would receive the loan, the airport would build the building, the airport would then lease the building to the FBO, take the proceeds, and then pay the MADC. So that at the end of the period, the building would be owned by the airport. This is consistent with literally every loan made by MADC. This is the only building that MADC owns. And this is not an uncommon construct. I mean, if you take a look at T-Wall downtown, I mean, T-Wall didn't pay cash for all those buildings. T-Wall got a loan and built the building. He leased out the buildings, and he took the revenue that he received, and he paid it to the banks, or is paying it to the banks. And at the end of the day, he will own the building. So we have kind of an unfortunate booking mechanism, whether it's intentional or unintentionally, I can't speak to, but it took money away from the airport that kind of were obligated to do. So as we see earlier going on in the finance, our cost of owning an airport is going up and up and up beyond what anybody ever thought. So if you take a look at the Runway Lights, which are now need to be replaced, they were $270,000. Now they're going to be $500,000. So these numbers, and who knows what they're going to be in a year or two. So the airport fund, as we have it, is never going to be able to support this, nor will we ever have enough entitlements, because the costs are going up much more than the entitlements. What I was proposing to the city, the idea is that the city would, so first of all, the MADC has already recouped all of the money for the building and the interest at a fair market value. So they really got paid back all of their money and all the interest associated with it, but they still have it as an asset. So what I was suggesting to the city was that they negotiate an agreement with MADC to purchase the building at a reasonable rate. I'll let them decide what that is. And would be something of the nature of they pay $3,000 a month on a loan with interest to the MADC over some period of time. They charge the $5,000 for the building, and they drop $2,000 to $3,000 a month, or another $36,000 into the airport fund to be able to help pay for their expenses. My fear is that if we don't think longer term than today, the airport fund can support the airport, and the city is going to have to go back and ask taxpayers for money. And I really would like to prevent that at all costs. You know, I think we have the wherewithal to continue as a closed economy, but we have to use all the tools that are kindly available to us. So is there any questions about that so far? Does anybody have a question? Okay, so what I'd like to do is I'd like to make a motion that we ask the city to enter into some discussion with MADC on the purchase of the building to determine if it's feasible and it's something that they should engage in, and then let the city make the determination. I think it's the city has to make a determination. Do I want the airport to own the building or MADC to own the building? And do I want MAC to own the building and keep the revenue and then have to fund the airport out of taxpayer dollars? Or do I put the building into the airport fund and defer paying taxpayer dollars to a later date? So the motion is for the city to engage with MADC on discussions regarding the transfer or purchase of the SRE or of the terminal building to the airport. Any questions on that?
John, this is Cynthia Richardson. I mean, is there any indication that MADC is potentially even interested in having this discussion of selling the terminal?
I believe the answer is yes. I've talked to a few people individually. However, this is the city's determination, not mine. But I kind of tested the waters, and I think people are open to the discussion. Will it come to anything? I really don't know. But I think that's, again, I think that's for the city to determine. If the city says, I think that this is a good thing for the city, or the MADC, because they're literally left pocket, right pocket, and let them make the decision on what they ought to do and how they ought to do it. I'm very comfortable for that. I'll participate with Bill Burns or anybody that they choose to, but it's up to the city to make these kinds of decisions.
This is Robert Burke. I sit on the Middleton Area Development Corporation. I wouldn't characterize it as left pocket, right pocket, because it's a completely independent entity. It has to be a completely independent entity, not affiliated with the city. But I think there is, to answer your question, Cynthia, and to confirm what John said, there's interest to at least pursue this further and learn what fair market price would be if this makes sense for both sides. I think this could happen. So yeah, that's.
I think the one thing that you have to think about when you talk about fair market value is that to remember that this building is on leased land. And that lease does have a terminal date. And at the end of the lease, if it's not renewed, the building becomes a cost center. It has to be removed. And now we've had, Capital Flight wants to build a nice new shiny building. And, that's something that there's no space for it. But I guess that's something to think about too. But again, I want the city to be engaged and figure out what's right for the city.
So John, I have recorded the motion as you see on the screen. Does that look right? And if so, that there has not been a second yet.
I say request the city enter in discussions with MSC regarding the potential purchase of the terminal building. I think I just take the two out and just say the motion is to request the city to enter into the discussions. I think that's the right thing to do. It's the city's the one that's going to have to pony up the extra money if we run out, because the hangar land leases are locked in for 5 years and the rate of increase is locked in for 5 years. I mean, where's the money going to come from?
So you said the motion is correct, or you wanted it
I would
edited?
take out the two in front of request. I would just say request. Request the city enter into discussions and take the two and the that out. There you go.
It makes less sense to me that way, but okay.
I'll turn it off.
Do I hear anybody willing to give me a second?
I'll give you a second on that, John. I mean, we're just entering into requesting and to discuss the issue. So I'll second
I
that.
mean, that's exactly. I mean, if they come up with something and they want to refer it back to the airport commission, I think that's great. That's up to them.
John, I think this reads better with like this, to request
Okay.
that the city, if I
All
may.
right. If you're happy with that, then I think it's close enough. So I have a first and a second. We have any additional discussion?
And by the way, I believe Ray Fay is present now. I see his name on my, on the screen, so.
Are you here, Ray?
Ray?
Somebody said it, four of them.
Ray, if you're there, could you just say hello?
Hello.
There you go.
All right. All right. So did you hear the
Mute.
discussions related to this item, Ray?
Say again, please.
This is John. Did you hear the discussions related
Yeah,
to this?
I did. I've been hearing the whole thing.
Okay, good. All right. So I have a first and the second. Is there any additional discussion? With that, I'd like to call a vote. Mark, you want to do the roll? Mark?
Sure. Halleck. John
I
said yes.
Aye.
Richardson.
Aye.
Munson.
Aye.
Bay.
Aye.
Burke.
Aye.
Bond. I'll ask again if she's here. Bond. And Foussard. Okay,
Okay,
that's
they're
your
not
vote.
present? All right. Okay, thank you.
Why don't you announce?
And then the next
Why don't you announce the
Go ahead.
vote? So it's all right. Well, you should
Motion
announce the
passed.
vote, not me as staff. But there you go.
Okay, so
Okay,
we say the
thank you.
motion passed 5-0. Is it actually, is it 5-0? I gotta count all the heads here. Okay, that's right.
Yeah, it is.
All right, sorry. With that, we'll move on to the next one. And this is just a topical item. And last year we got, this is for the development of the budget. And I'd like to take a try at developing the budget using the items that we have and the run rate for the various items for next year, but also I'd like to do it and see what it looks like in 5 years and also what it looks like in 10 years. And I caveated this as built. This is the airport as we know it today. This is not any changes that occur because, we don't know there's going to be any changes occurring. So, and the purpose of doing this is to be able to see the rate of growth of the hangar land leases and the fuel. I mean, we know what that rate looks like over our population. And then we would put in the building, potentially the MAC element, and we also know what what it looks like for the other revenue producer, which is now the solar farm. So let's put all these things together in 1 year, 5 years, and 10 years. When do we have to have the budget in to the city, Mark?
Well, typically the budgets are submitted by mid-August, but this year, who knows? But I would gear up for anticipating mid-August as in the past.
Yeah. So, so we're not too early. So what I'd like to do with that is take the things that I know for sure and put them on a sheet, and I'll send them out in the next packet. And then we can try to take a look at and discuss it. I just want to make sure that when we leave the airport commission, some of you may want to be here forever. Some of us probably won't be here forever. And what we do is that we've thought it through, and we're not just doing today. We're thinking about it in longer term. And I think that's just a responsible thing to do. So that was really just kind of a heads up item. So that's all I have on that item. Future events, next month we'll talk about, most of this is really about money anymore. We have to figure out how we're going to do the runway lights. We need to figure out, and hopefully we'll have bids soon enough on the snow removal equipment. We'll start on the budget and start those discussions, and we'll start working towards the goal to make sure we have a fiscally sound budget that takes us forward without putting any undue burden on the citizens, and try to do that in a closed economy. We also have looming somewhere out into the future, the airport manager's contract. Rich's contract doesn't get up till the end of December 2021. I don't know, Mark, how much lead time did you guys do this last time?
That was, let's see, 2021, so that would have been 16. A few months, a couple months. You know, it doesn't hurt to, I mean, we, rather than doing things last minute, it doesn't hurt to start talking about it here in the near future.
So we're really quite a ways off on that. So typically,
Is it
started.
is it end of 21 or end of 20?
It's the
I
end
think
of
it's 21.
So we're way ahead. That really won't take up much time, or we shouldn't really allocate much time for that. And then obviously the other thing is whatever happens to AMPAC, and when that thing starts moving again, and I have no idea when that'll happen. I have not seen any information. We'll try to shadow along, but we really are only going to make sure that everybody on the airport commission has the same documents that are given to AMPAC, but we will not discuss it because we do not want to undermine any of the work that's being done by AMPAC. I just don't think that's appropriate, and something we shouldn't do. But we do need to be educated and be prepared for it. And so that will be something else that we need to be thinking about. With that, does anybody else have any thoughts of things that they think we should deal with in the future? If you do, please send an email to Mark or myself, and we're certainly, as appropriate, we'll put it on the agenda. And with that, do I hear any kind of a motion for adjournment?
Motion
guys
to
wanna sit here
adjourn
all
from
night?
Robert
I'll
Burke.
make the motion. This is Richson.
Okay, so
I heard Robert
Cynthia,
and then
yeah,
somebody.
I'll second. Well, okay.
Okay,
Or I can second either way.
okay,
it doesn't.
okay, we have a first and a second.
Okay.
Okay, is there any discussion? Okay, with that, I'd like to call the vote to adjourn. You want to call the roll again, Mark?
How about, does anyone object
Roll
to
to
it?
adjourn?
No one's
Yeah, I
objecting,
think
John.
for adjournment,
No one
it's
object?
de facto, so.
Okay, all right, I
Yeah.
just want to make sure we're comprehensive. We dot our i's, we cross our t's. All right, with that,
Great.
ladies and gentlemen,
Thank you.
I appreciate you muddling through with us. Stay healthy,
All right.
and we will talk soon. Bye-bye.
All right.
Thanks, Ann. Thanks, all.
Thanks, Mark.
Yep, take care.
All right. Now I gotta fix